Why are you a Republican?
I'm a Republican because as a Labour Party member I feel I have to be committed to equality, to fairness, a just society where everybody can, with support from the community, rise to the top, and having a system where we have one family that is imposed on us by birth and has all this power, influence exerted behind the scenes is not what I want my country to be like.
And why are you a Republican?
I'm a Republican because I think the idea that we're not allowed to elect our head of state is something that we should be ashamed of in this day and age.
I'm a Republican because I simply find it as a matter of principle in this day and age that it's simply wrong that a parent can pass on to their child the office of head of state.
I'm aware that life's not fair, but I was always told to strive for it, and the system we've got isn't fair. It should be made so.
Yes, we're not equal at birth, but we can be politically equal at birth, and that means removing any vestiges of hereditary privilege and power.
I'm a Republican because I believe in democracy, and the current system we have flies in the face of democracy. So it's just the principle of it.
And what practical benefits do you think becoming a republic would have to the ordinary man or woman in the street?
They would have a say in electing the head of state, whereas at the moment they have no input into who our head of state is. It would at least give them a chance to have their say in the democratic system.
Yeah, it's not going to put any extra pennies in anybody's pocket, but it's about defining ourselves better as a nation and what we should aspire to as individuals at birth.
It means that everybody's got a vested interest in the country, not just a small ruling class.
I tend not to go too far away from the basic principle, and it's the right thing to put into place, and everything flows from there. Costs and everything else, and the benefits to the British people flow from the fact that that they are following the principle from its roots.
I think basically the benefits might not be obvious to the ordinary person in the UK or in Britain, whatever you want to call it, but the idea that we have a very small number of people, the head of state and the next in line to the throne, who have the opportunity to be able to veto and look at any sort of legislation that will affect their private interests, something that no other person in the country is able to do, is something that anybody in their right mind should be opposed to. So it might not be immediately obvious to people, but for me that's something that would be an enormous benefit to everybody.
I think it sends a powerful message about who we are as a nation, what we believe in. If you look at America, you have Barack Obama being elected. That was just the son of an immigrant who is black in a country where it's very hard to be black, is able to rise to the top and become the head of that nation. I mean, that sends out a powerful message about what you want in a country in terms of social mobility.
Now, we're often told that the monarchy have no political power. We know now for a fact that that's untrue. Do you think that the monarchy should be allowed to continue with their massive political power?
Of course not. I don't believe we should have a political system where anybody can interfere by dint of their power, whether it's a Murdoch or a Windsor. It's just not on.
The only legitimate political power is that which has been given to somebody through the ballot box, and so therefore the political power that the monarchy have isn't earned, it isn't theirs by right.
I can only agree with those 2 points. It's as simple as that. It's all about the individual, and no individual should be any higher than another.
Charles Windsor still thinks that he rules by God's mercy, and it's time that stopped.
Yeah, can I make the point that the Queen's recent intervention in the extradition case points to the fact that in many ways I want a head of state to challenge our MPs and represent a popularist viewpoint. But the problem with her particular viewpoint, it wasn't actually what she said, but the fact we can't vote her out if we disagree with it, and that is fundamentally wrong.
Another reason why I'm a Republican is I believe in 2010 the coalition government made a blanket exception, FOI exception, on all royal matters. For everything now, it's been banned. And I cannot understand, or I can't accept that the legitimacy why any FOI requests are now banned, to do with anything to do with the royal family. Where is the justification in that? I just can't understand it.
And following on from that, the only reason for it seems to be that it's to keep the monarchy secret.
I'm sure it is, but what does that say again about democracy? What does that tell you about the type of democracy, or how democratic we are as a country then? What does that tell you?
And presumably you don't think that we should be governed in secret, under secret rules?
Well, there may be certain things in the public interest, but I don't believe the emails from regarding the royal family is in the public interest to be kept secret.
One of the things we hear on that a lot is it works, and I mean that in itself is not an argument. There are many regimes around the world that work that aren't particularly nice. In Italy, for example, Italy was never better run, if you talk to most Italians, than under Mussolini. But there's not many Italians who would want Mussolini back. So the fact that it works, or is deemed to work, is not a valid reason for keeping it.
You can't run a country on mystique. Mystique's for novels and stories. It's not for countries running.
I always remind myself of a simple parallel, really, in this world at the moment, and that is that our democracy is run by a head of state who has exactly the same lineage as they do in North Korea, which is very, very disturbing, to say the least.
I think the monarchy and the whole royal family have become pseudo-celebrities in recent years, and I think they're very wrapped up in playing princes and princesses, and I would have thought that our society has moved on from princes and princesses, or I certainly would hope it had, and an obsession with what they're wearing and what sporting event they're attending is somehow detracting from the fundamental idea that they're there just simply by an accident of birth and no more than that.
Yeah, I think the Palace PR does an excellent job in trying to convince a lot of people not to think about it. They sweep a lot under the carpet, and most people haven't really considered it.
Now, at present, all MPs, all policemen, all members of the Army and the Air Force have to swear an oath of allegiance, not to the country, but to the monarchy. Do you think that should be stopped?
Definitely, they should swear allegiance to the people who they represent and serve.
Yeah, without a doubt, they should be swearing allegiance to the country and to the population of the country, not to this family that's there by an accident of birth. But while that family is still there, and while we'll still have a constitutional hereditary monarchy, that will be the case.
It's a totally absurd notion that they should be doing that, and I think that if you ask them, in their heart of hearts, most of them don't really care about saying an oath to the Queen. They are already discreetly just concerned about the country.
Should be there to protect us and to provide services for us, not for them. They belong to us, not them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it succinctly. If anybody challenges me on that, it's basically I want a head of state who's subject to us rather than we are subject to. It's as simple as that.
I would just say I would like to know why they have to swear that the armed forces, police, etc. have to swear an oath of allegiance to do the job. I would like to know the reason why they have to do that. And if they have to swear an oath of allegiance, what's wrong with swearing an oath of allegiance to the country, to the people of this country?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
John Bercow, the Speaker of the House of Commons, has said that all comments made about the monarchy should be very brief and very respectful, and MPs can be thrown out simply for referring to the monarchy in ways that he doesn't like.
Yes.
Should that be allowed to happen?
Well, of course not. But I mean, others will tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's always been like a part of the procedure of the House of Commons, that no MP is allowed to raise any matter about the monarchy in this country. I don't know whether, I think that is the case at the moment, I'm not sure, but I think that's the case, and it's definitely, why should they be exempt from, why should there be a ban on speaking about the monarchy in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame the present speaker for that. He's just following protocol that's been developed over centuries. And I don't know what the document is that they have to follow, the parliamentary procedure, but clearly we can't blame him for that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fundamental as a republic. Sorry, it's a fundamental for a republic, but that's one of the first things we address. We need to remove that oath so that we can have free discussion and debate about what the royal family are getting up to.
Well, respect has got to be earned, and they've not earned anything. They've just got it through birth. That's wrong. It can't be right.
I think, as we've heard, it's all a lot to do with protocol, and we can do something about that, but we can't do something until the monarchy is removed.
Yeah, it's all about protocol and tradition. It's also wrapped up with the fact that we don't have a written constitution. A constitution is something that is said to have evolved over centuries, and of course centuries ago we were a very different society as we are now. So I think it's a whole fundamental change based around abolition of the monarchy, the creation of a republic and a written constitution.
I agree with all that. Everyone's put it very succinctly.
Finally, the BBC. They're often criticised for their ultra-sycophantic broadcasting. Would you like to say anything about them?
Well, I think the BBC should remember that it belongs and is supposed to represent the viewpoints of the British people, and even now, in an era where we have a massive PR campaign against us, basically, massive state-funded PR campaign, we still have a significant amount of people who are willing to come out and say they're out-and-out monarchists, Republicans, excuse me, and their views aren't even represented. I mean, if you look at it on a sort of a very crude analysis, if 1/5, I think it was, around the world went and said they were out-and-out, fully committed, swear out, come and say Republicans, did we get a fifth of the coverage? No, we got like a line or two. I mean, that's not representative, and that should change.
Yeah, I get absolutely furious about the continual sycophantic fawning of the BBC over the royal family. They just talk about them as if they're just, a really nice family who do really fabulous things for the country, and aren't they great? No questioning, no detailed examination of what it is they do, what they represent, the vested interests they have, and how they protect their vested interests. It's absolutely infuriating.
What I find particularly annoying is that although they're described as a head of state, it's very, very rarely that their exposure to the press, or the BBC in particular, ever gets addressed as such. It's just what they do as personalities. And so whatever role they have is secondary, and that's not right.
The BBC was set up and is paid by licence payers, so therefore it should represent all licence payers, as I've already mentioned. And we got less than a fifth of the population of Republicans. Surely we should have got as much press as the Royalists do.
Yeah, I think it harks back to a previous era when the BBC was a different organisation. The concept of a royal correspondent, that needs to go.
It's absurd.
Absolutely absurd that effectively the BBC becomes an extension of the palace PR machine. If there has to be a BBC department for it, why not call it Head of State Matters or something? But the fact that they constantly and of course the royal family get to veto who gets into that role as well. So it's not even a free choice of the BBC who performs that role. So that has to go.
I would just say the BBC has been criticised, I think recently, over the Jubilee coverage by the monarchists. They're saying the BBC coverage was amateur, not deferential enough. But I think if you look over many years, I think the BBC is the coverage of the coverage of the BBC gives to the monarchy is I think there's an inherent bias. There's a bias built into the coverage of the BBC generally. If you look back over many years and compare the coverage it gives towards the monarchy as against the Republican side of the story.
Can I just make one final point on that? It harks back to a different era when we were more deferential on a number of issues, not just the royal family, but the Prime Minister. I mean, it wasn't so long ago, many decades ago, where the BBC correspondent would politely ask the Prime Minister, have you got anything to say to the nation this evening? And then politely, if he said, no, I haven't, he'd say, well, we'll leave it there. There was no questioning. And the BBC are sort of stuck in this time warp with the royal family very much along that mould.
A royal correspondent should give as much scrutiny as a foreign correspondent does. A foreign correspondent scrutinises a story from both angles. A royal correspondent only seems to give it from their side.
Yeah. Royal correspondents basically are talking about what hat and what colour frock the Queen.
They're a mouthpiece, not a correspondent.
Exactly. I think it's an excellent point, actually.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.